All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Channel 534 News. I'm Grace Callahan, a Lakes Region Conservation Corps member with the Squam Lakes Association, and today I have with me Roger Larochelle, Executive Director of the Squam Lakes Conservation Society, who happens to share a building with the Squam Lakes Association at 534 US Route 3. So I've asked Roger to come on today so we can all learn a little more about something that very positively influences all of our lives, but we might not know much about it. And that thing is conservation easements. So Roger, before we get started, can you just say a little bit about the SLCS and maybe a fun fact about yourself?
Great. Well, really nice to join you, Grace, this morning. I've served as executive director here at the Conservation Society for the last 18 years. It's just an incredible privilege to be working in the Squam community. We work very closely with the Squam Lakes Association. The whole community is epitomized by its conservation ethos, and we're a part of that. So it's really been a privilege to work with landowners throughout the watershed in advancing land conservation, which really is permanent land protection. That's the key when you talk about land conservation. It's not temporary. It is something that is put in place for all the days to come. And a fun fact about me, let's see, tomorrow I'll be picking up 4 pigs, and on Saturday we'll be getting 4 lambs to join our 10 chickens on our little funny farm.
Wow, that is very fun. I'm a little jealous. I guess I should share a fun fact. I just saw a huge pileated woodpecker out of my window, so that's exciting. So can you give us the basics on what exactly conservation easement is and why it's important to the work that you do?
Sure. They're really a fascinating agreement between a landowner and an organization such as ours, which is a land trust, which dedicates land to permanent protection. It's a voluntary agreement that a landowner makes to dedicate X number of acres into permanent protection. So it's a little tricky in terms of the instrument, the legal instrument that it is, but at its basically, it is a voluntary agreement with a landowner today that will dedicate that land forever as conservation land. So we have a partnership with the landowner, present and future, to steward and protect that land for all the days to come. We hold about 120 conservation easements, and 30% of the watershed here at Squam is permanently protected, most of it with conservation easements. So they've been a really highly effective tool to put land into permanent protection.
Wow. And so of that 30% that's conserved, what is the time span historically that those conservation easements have been created?
Yeah, that's a great, so easements have been in place since the early 70s. Prior to that, people would gift land to permanent protection. So here at Squam, 1953 was the first one, which is Chamberlain Reynolds Forest. And then in the 60s, there were a couple of properties, Five Finger Point and Rattlesnake, or the Armstrong Natural Area, that were given to organizations, UNH or New England Forestry or the Squam Lakes Association or the Conservation Society. But things really accelerated when conservation easements allowed a landowner to continue to own the property, but dedicate it to conservation. And that's the real beauty to the conservation easement, is the landowner still can harvest the trees, still could do agriculture on the property, still has the enjoyment of those acres, but they're never to be developed. That's what a conservation easement puts in place. And then we become both the steward, partner, and the police, in that we have to enforce these restrictions that are for all the days to come. So in the 80s, things started accelerating, and then somewhat in the 90s, but really since the year 2000, Squam has gone from about 8% conserved to 30%. Much of that was done throughout the 2000s and this last decade. And looking forward, there's still there's almost an infinite number of conservation projects. They just won't be as large as kind of encompassing, but they'll be probably more complex.
Got it. So what is your role and your colleagues' role in creating these conservation easements? Are you seeking out people to create new conservation easements? Are people approaching you? Both?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have several easements in the pipeline. One we did about a month ago was the former Long Haul Farm in Holderness, where a young couple moved to Holderness, built their house, had an excess 18 acres behind their house, and they wanted to dedicate it to conservation, and they donated a conservation easement. One of the amazing things about the Squam community is 90% of our easements have been donated. So, and some of them are, highly valued, and landowners can benefit from that charitable deduction, but they really do it because they love this place and they want to protect it. And that's what's really awesome about it. So we're, on one hand, kind of the policeman enforcing the restriction, and on the other, kind of the ally and steward of the landowners and working to provide them, some resources. So our role in it is to work with landowners. They often approach us, and there are clusters. So one neighbor will do it, or one person will do it, and then their neighbor may be interested. And then over time, you kind of string together these pearls around the lake, and then it amounts to 30% where we're at today.
Wow. It definitely has a really important impact. So anyone that owns their land could put their land under conservation easement?
Yep, we have some that are half an acre and some that are 250 acres. And we're in the process of completing one on the backside of the Squam Range, which is about 6,500 acres, which just outside the watershed. But some of them are, they get complicated, but any landowner is welcome to consider their conservation options. We don't charge for consultations. We work with landowners, throughout the area, and we're glad to talk with anyone out there that would be interested in learning more.
Awesome. So other than Chamberlain Reynolds, what are some areas that viewers might be familiar with that are under conservation easement?
So I would encourage people to go to the Doublehead Preserve. It's one of the kind of unkept secrets at Squam, with just a great view. There's a picnic area up there, and the view from the top of Doublehead is really terrific too. Witten Woods is one that we worked on 5 years ago that not that many people know about in Ashland. You get a surprising different perspective of the Squam Range, and you can look out over Little Squam, one of the few places where you can see Little Squam and Big Squam simultaneously together. So that's a good one. The Unsworth Preserve is a great walking area. Belknap Woods, another place that we have an easement, and the SLA owns the underlying property. But we work closely with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust and the Squam Lakes Association and other local organizations, as well as landowners.
That's awesome. All right. I think that is all I have for you today. Thanks so much for joining us. If anyone watching wants to learn more about SLCS or what they're doing, be sure to check out their website at squamslandtrust.org. They have a really cool interactive map. If you click Our Lands and Map of Conserved Land, then you can toggle to the little menu bar and click on trails or peaks and the streams, and it shows you where all of those coincide with land under conservation easement. And be sure to stay tuned for our next Share Learn adventure. You can find past Share Learn adventures on squamlakes.org. And if you're out on conserved land and you take a picture, share it with us using the hashtag Share Learn Adventure. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Grace.
Have a good day.